Hello, Waterford students. It's Mrs. Durst and Flora. Flora's here today to help us with our lesson. In the past few lessons, we've talked about those aspects that artists use to portray a mood or an emotion. We've talked about weather, and we've also talked about the time of day featured in art to help speak to us. Today, we are going to be talking about seasons. Seasons are the most powerful tool that we have in our toolbox to talk to our audience. We all can relate to the freshness of spring, the heat of summer, the colors of fall, and the coldness of winter. And no matter when we've lived on this planet, the seasons matter to us. We plant, we harvest, we protect each other during the winter. In the summer, we go out and catch fish. There's all these things that we've been doing since the beginning of man, and they all deal with seasonalities or season. So when you're an artist and you put seasons into your work, it is very powerful. So we are about to go through our lesson 3 packet. We are going to spend some time with this because seasons not only are very important and powerful, they're really fun to work in. Flora and I can't wait to show you our first season. Let's look here at some beautiful art. Our first season we're going to work in is really the hardest season to work in. Winter. Winter is difficult because it really deals with the absence of color. You have to use a lot of whites and lights and darks. It's a lot of use of shadow because days are so short during the winter. You have a lot of shadows being thrown in an art piece that cause emotion, cause some feeling. Your palette, the paints and colors that you choose when you're painting a winter scene are muted. They're not as bright as a sunny day in the summer. A winter day tends to be a little more foggy or dark, and you use a lot more grays and browns and neutral colors and muted colors. So let's look at some famous winter paintings. Our first one is called The Hunters in the Snow by Peter Bruegel the Elder. This painting was painted, I want you to guess, how many hundreds of years ago do you think this painting was painted? I'll tell you. 455 years ago, Peter Bruegel the Elder painted this painting on a very thin piece of oak wood. It is probably the most famous winter painting around. There's a few others I'll show you, but this one really is up there. This painting, we see two sides of winter all at the same time. We see out in this amazing view over this valley that people are having a wonderful time on this frozen pond. They're playing hockey, they're skating. They're all out there having a great time during the winter. However, in the foreground, we see the hunters coming home. Their dogs are exhausted and just ready for a nap. And unfortunately, these hunters did not have a successful day. They're not bringing home a lot of food for the town. So this painting really talks to the two sides of winter that happen. There's the fear of getting through the winter and having enough food. And yet it's a very fun time to enjoy the snow and ice. Remember, this painting was painted 455 years ago in 1565. I love this painting because the colors are, to me, what winter feels like. I feel the grays, the dank kind of yellows, blues, everything's sort of muted. I love his use of shadow, or the lack of shadow in this painting. The trees are very dark. I also noticed that there's a raven up in the tree looking out. Let's go to our next one, something very different. This is called The Winter Landscape by Edvard Munch. It was painted in 1915, and you might know Edvard's very famous The Scream, but this is a landscape painting. He was Norwegian, and this painting occurred, or he did this painting in the depths of a Norwegian winter, which, let me tell you, is extremely cold and very dark. But though he used a lot of rich, dark colors, I love this painting because of all the different rainbow of colors I see. I see purple in there, and yellow, and green, and red, and orange. It is not just white and gray. It is the whole rainbow is depicted in this very cold setting, and definitely winter. And Edvard did a beautiful job creating a piece that moves you, even though there's no people in it, right? It's just a landscape, but it's gorgeous and makes you feel something. Another very famous winter painting is by Claude Monet. You may remember in our last video that Claude Monet did the water lily paintings. So a lot of color in the summer, very vibrant. And here we are in winter, muted colors, a lot of white. The thing about this painting that I love is that little bird perched on the rickety fence. I just think without that bird there, this painting may not have been famous. And yet here he is. And I want you to know there's not a single brush stroke of black in this whole painting. All the dark, dark shadows and colors are painted in these very shocking blues, dark, dark blues. So that makes this painting very special as well. But wow, it's so beautiful, just beautiful. Here we have something a little unique. In the 1830s, a partnership between a man named Nathaniel Currier and James Ives came together. They were printers. They decided to create an art company, and they printed art. They employed all kinds of famous artists from America, or up-and-coming talented artists, and gave them a job, and they would create these images that were then printed on paper. Currier and Ives became an American staple, very famous. This painting, or I guess it's a print, I'd have to call it a print, is probably one of the most recognized Currier and Ives prints of all time. It's called An American Homestead in Winter. And it shows a scene that just makes you feel happy, but yet it's winter. There's a lot of activity happening. And what was so iconic about this piece, or all of their art at Currier and Ives, is that everybody could afford it. So for the first time in the 1830s and 40s, people could afford to hang a very nice piece of art in their homes. So Currier and Ives really was almost in everyone's homes across America. And they depicted these wonderful scenes, historic scenes of Americana. And they are someone we need to know about if we want to know about our art history in this country. Vincent van Gogh painted this beautiful winter piece when he arrived in the countryside in France in 1888. In fact, 1888 was a record snowy, cold winter in France. And many people took drives out into the countryside just to get away from the dank city. And Vincent van Gogh fell in love with this scape. This was probably one of his first paintings that he painted out in the French countryside. And I love it because it shows just a moment, a guy walking in the snowy landscape with his dog, but also notice all the beautiful colors that he worked in under the snow. I think it talks to hope that after a very snowy winter, just beneath is this colorful landscape waiting to emerge as the spring will come. So I really love this painting by Vincent van Gogh. Talk about color. This is Vasily Kandinsky, a very famous Russian painter, and his winter landscape. Now, Kandinsky went on in his artistic career to create very abstract art. And we'll learn more about that at another time. But early on, he painted landscapes in a very modern way. And you know that it's winter when you look at his trees. And you also know that it must be winter because what else can reflect all of that color but a white, snowy landscape? So in my mind, I feel Kandinsky is capturing maybe a sunrise or a sunset in the snow as we look at it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful winter landscape, but not in the colors that you would ever expect. His palette is completely different than what I would expect. And I think that's why this is such a famous winter painting. Now, here is one of my favorite painters. This is Charles Wysocki's Bostonian and Beans, okay? It's one of his last works. He really perfected a folk art Americana imagery in his work. I think it looks a lot like the first painting we looked at today that was painted 455 years ago. And this painting here was painted in the 1990s. So I look at this, and what he tried to do is paint every image in this whole piece of work showing something happy. And I think that's kind of cool. I think that it's also very wonderful to look in a picture with so much detail and realize something different every time you see it. This was his largest piece of work. It's over 5 feet wide in real life. It is an acrylic on canvas. And Wysocki was just known for this very neat use of maybe a village and what was going on inside of that village. By now, you probably recognize this painting as a Ben Richmond because we've been learning about him. This is his shop. It is his art studio, and this is called Christmas at the Art Studio. So Ben Richmond did a wonderful job of always trying to feature seasons. Here we know it's the Christmas time because of the wreath and the snow, and you see the tree has been brought in the back of the truck. And so it's kind of cool to understand what time of year this is happening. Ben Richmond created this Christmas morn picture, and I love it because you see the joy that's about to happen. Some little person is about ready to discover a brand new sled on Christmas. And I think that that speaks a lot to this picture. There's also the Christmas tree in the background, although it's not decorated, is there kind of looking at us in this picture. Again, a moment of a season creates a feeling for us. We're anticipating the joy that's about ready to happen that morning with that sled. Ben Richmond also created this one. I love this one. Now, it is called Awaiting Christmas. It could be the morning of Christmas or the night before, or, you know, it could be sunset or sunrise. I'm not really sure, but it is interesting because it's as if the tree and the deer are awaiting Christmas together. And I think that the season that this painting tries to strike in us is very important. You will also recognize perhaps an Alan Malley painting. This is his Winter Carousel. And we're looking at a carousel that he famously painted in a lot of different seasons in all kinds of colors and stripes. And we'll look at it at another time. But in this painting, the carousel is closed. The colors are muted. It's definitely snowing in this image. And we see that it's absolutely winter. Alan Malley also painted this painting. It's called The Circle of Life. And in the back, we know what season it is because of the Christmas tree. And we see that it's snowing in the window. So we know that it's around the December holidays season. And our final picture to look at today, our final painting, is by Alan Malley. This one is titled New Year's Eve. And it's snowing. It's a magical night. Everyone is dressed in their very best to go out for a New Year's Eve party or performance. And I think that the setting and the beauty of the season in this painting strikes a chord. I love this painting for winter. And so does Flora. Thank you for looking at those paintings with us. What I would love for you to do is look at the very next video and find your packet with Flora on the front. And then we're going to work in the winter section of this packet. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.